My brother caught me doing something unusual. With my cat, what happened next is crazy. You'll never believe what happened the moment my brother walked in on me and my cat. The whole thing escalated so quickly that I couldn't even think straight. What was supposed to be a relaxing evening turned into a nightmare. What I did, what he saw, everything got twisted in a way I didn't expect. But this story isn't just about the crazy thing that happened. It's about what happened next, after everything exploded. Stick with me to the end, because trust me, this is one of those situations where the truth is stranger than fiction. It was just supposed to be another ordinary night. I had been living at home for a few months after finishing college, trying to figure out what my next step in life would be. The house was quiet, and my parents were out for the evening. That left just me and my brother, Danny, who was in the other room playing video games. He was always so caught up in his games that he barely noticed what was going on around him. My cat, Whiskers, had always been my companion. She was a strange little thing, never quite fitting in with the other cats. I used to joke about how she was more like a dog than a cat, always following me around, sitting by my side, demanding attention at the weirdest times. But that night, I needed to do something with her. It wasn't the first time, and I didn't think much of it. We had this little ritual that no one really knew about, something between me and her. Whiskers would curl up in my lap as I sat on the couch, and I would scratch behind her ears, watching TV or scrolling on my phone. It was our time. But that night, for reasons I can't fully explain, I felt the urge to do something a little different. Something strange. It was innocent enough, but I never imagined it would end the way it did. I decided to give her a quick bath, which she didn't exactly enjoy. Cats, as you know, aren't fond of water. But I had always been the one to calm her down in situations like these. It wasn't as if I were doing something abnormal, right? Cats get baths and owners wash them all the time. But as I tried to dry her off with a towel afterward, I realized I'd made the situation a lot more complicated than I'd intended. That's when Danny walked in. The door creaked open, and he froze in place. I had no idea what he saw at first, but his face was full of shock. Danny stood there for a solid minute, eyes wide, his jaw slightly dropped. The weird thing was, he didn't even say anything. He just stared, clearly trying to make sense of what he was seeing. I froze, holding Whiskers, who, for the first time, seemed just as startled as me. I quickly adjusted myself, trying to hide my awkwardness. And then I cleared my throat. "Dude, it's not what it looks like," I mumbled, feeling a wave of heat rise to my face. I had never felt so embarrassed in my life. Danny didn't reply immediately. He just took a slow step back and raised his hands in surrender. "What the hell, man?" he finally said, his voice almost a mix of confusion and concern. Why are you doing that with your cat?" I could feel my palms sweating and a lump formed in my throat. I'd been caught in the middle of something that seemed perfectly normal to me, but Danny? He clearly didn't see it that way. I opened my mouth to explain, but no words came out. It felt like my brain was short-circuiting, trying to find a way to make this situation sound less insane. Whiskers, thankfully, wasn't too upset. She gave me an annoyed look, like she couldn't care less about the drama unfolding, and jumped down from my lap, slinking off to a safer spot in the room. That was when Danny finally spoke up again, his voice almost a whisper. Are you serious right now?" His words hung in the air. I knew I had to explain, but how do you explain something like this without sounding completely out of touch? I wasn't some crazy cat person or anything. I was just a guy who had gotten used to spending time with his pet in his own weird little way. But now everything felt different. Everything felt wrong. "I don't know, man. It's just a thing we do," I stammered, trying to keep it together. "It's not what it looks like, I swear. I was trying to calm her down after the bath, okay?" Danny didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, processing the information, or whatever it was that he was trying to process. And then he turned around without a word and walked back out of the room. I sat there, staring at the empty doorway, feeling a mix of confusion and dread. I didn't know what to do. The whole situation was so bizarre, and the last thing I wanted was for Danny to think I was weird. I had no idea how to salvage this. But as the minutes ticked by, I realized that my life had just taken a huge turn. What if he tells everyone? What if this moment somehow ruins my reputation, or worse, our relationship? Make sure to like the video and subscribe so you never miss more shocking and real stories like this one. I sat there, still frozen, for what felt like an eternity. I could hear the faint sound of Danny's footsteps retreating down the hallway, but I didn't move. My mind was racing. What had just happened? I had barely processed what Danny had seen, let alone how I was supposed to fix it. After a while, I decided to go after him. I stood up, pacing around my room, feeling the adrenaline pumping through my veins. There was no way I was going to just let him walk away without at least trying to talk to him, explain myself, something. I needed to salvage this before it got any worse. When I reached the living room, Danny was sitting on the couch, his hands resting on his knees, staring at the floor. His shoulders were tense and he didn't look up when I walked in. I hesitated for a moment before sitting down next to him. "Look, Danny," I started, my voice shaky. "I get that this is weird, but please just hear me out. It's not what you think. I've been spending a lot of time with Whiskers lately. She's my pet, and we've just developed this routine. I know it sounds odd, but it helps her. It calms her down after a bath, okay?" He didn't say anything at first. He just continued staring at the floor, processing everything. Then, after a long pause, he finally spoke up. "I don't know, man. It's just, I've never seen anyone act like that with a cat. It's kind of creepy." His voice was soft, but there was a clear sense of discomfort in it. "I mean, we're talking about a pet here, not a person." I felt a sting of guilt hit me. I could tell that he was genuinely concerned, but I wasn't sure how to explain it in a way that wouldn't make me sound crazy. I had always been close with Whiskers. She was more than just a pet to me, she was my companion. But now, everything felt wrong. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. "I know it sounds messed up," I said, my voice quiet. "But I promise, I'm not like that. I've been doing it for so long now, it's just become part of our routine. It helps her, and it helps me. She's a part of my life. She's like family." Danny finally looked up, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "I'm not trying to judge you," he said, his tone softer now. "I just don't get it. I don't know how to feel about all this, man. It's a lot to process." I nodded, feeling the weight of the situation. "Yeah, I get it. I understand. I just didn't want you to think I don't know, some freak." Danny leaned back against the couch, letting out a deep sigh. "I don't think you're a freak," he said, his voice more relaxed now. "It's just strange, and maybe we need to talk about it more. Like, really talk about it." At that moment, I realized something. Maybe the awkwardness and discomfort weren't going to go away right away. But I had to deal with it, one step at a time. This wasn't going to be something that could just be ignored. It was going to take time. "I understand," I said. "But I swear to you, Danny, there's nothing weird going on. I just care about her. I know it sounds odd, but I just need you to trust me on this." He nodded slowly, though I could tell he wasn't fully convinced. "Okay," he said, "but I still think we need to figure out what the hell just happened." The next few days were filled with an uncomfortable tension. Danny and I barely spoke. I could tell he was still processing everything, but I didn't know how to fix it. The weirdest part was, I didn't even know what I was trying to fix. Was I trying to convince him that I wasn't some weirdo who needed help? Or was I trying to justify what had happened, even though deep down I knew it wasn't normal? I didn't talk to Whiskers about it, of course. I mean, how would I even explain the situation to a cat? But every time I looked at her, I felt this overwhelming sense of guilt. She didn't ask for any of this, and I couldn't help but wonder. Was I crossing some invisible line that I couldn't see? Could I go back to the way things were? Or was this incident going to haunt me forever? The silence between Danny and me only grew heavier, but I kept hoping that time would heal the awkwardness. I tried to distract myself, diving into work and even taking up a new hobby to keep my mind off things. But every time I looked at my phone or heard the door open, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. Then came that one evening when Danny actually spoke to me. I was sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone when I heard him say, "Hey, can we talk?" I looked up, a little taken aback by the sudden invitation. "Sure, what's up?" Danny hesitated, then sat down next to me. His usual casual demeanor was replaced by a more serious, concerned look. "I've been thinking about the whole thing with Whiskers," he began, "and I've been doing some research. I've been looking up stuff, just trying to understand it better." My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean, research? He looked at me, almost sheepishly. I don't know, man. I mean, I know I should have probably just talked to you sooner, but I felt, I don't know, weird about it. Like, I didn't want to make it worse. I wasn't sure where this conversation was heading, but I could already feel a tightness in my chest. Danny, just say it, I urged, trying to keep my cool. What did you find? He took a deep breath before responding. I found a few things, some articles, some studies, and honestly, man, I don't know what to think. There are things online about people doing things like this with animals. I mean, it's a real thing. I froze. My mind was racing. This wasn't what I was expecting. What did he mean by things like this? I tried to speak, but no words came out. My throat was dry, and I felt like I was losing control of the conversation. What do you mean, Danny? I managed to croak. What kind of things? His eyes darted away from me, his face flushed with embarrassment. I don't know, man. There's some messed up stuff out there, and I don't want you to get in trouble, you know? I'm just worried about you. The words hung in the air like a bomb, and I felt my stomach churn. I didn't know how to respond. It was clear that Danny was trying to help, but this whole thing had spiraled out of control in a way I never imagined. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the weight of Danny's words sinking in. I had always considered him my best friend, someone I could trust, but now it felt like there was this invisible wall between us that I didn't know how to tear down. It was like I was seeing him in a completely different light. Danny's worry was genuine, but his words were a reminder that there were people out there who might not understand or could even turn against me for something I didn't fully comprehend myself. The guilt I'd felt before had intensified, and the confusion was overwhelming. Was I some kind of freak? Was I sick? I didn't know what to think anymore. After what felt like a long pause, I spoke up, trying to regain some control over the conversation. Danny, listen. I don't know what I did. I didn't plan for it to happen. It was just... I don't know. It's hard to explain. But I swear, it wasn't some weird obsession or anything. Danny shifted uneasily in his seat. He wasn't angry, but I could see the concern in his eyes. I get it. I really do. But, man, it's not something to just ignore. You need to talk to someone, like a therapist or something. Maybe you've been holding this in for a long time, but it's not healthy, and it's not okay, you know? His words hit me harder than I expected. A therapist? Was I really that messed up? Was there something wrong with me? The thought of talking to someone about something so embarrassing made my stomach turn. But Danny's face was full of care, and for the first time, I realized he wasn't judging me. He was trying to help. I don't know, Danny, I mumbled, my voice barely audible. I just don't know what to do. What if I go to therapy and they tell me something's wrong with me? What if I can't fix it? Danny sighed and placed a hand on my shoulder. Look, bro, therapy is for everyone. You've always been there for me, and I'm just trying to do the same. If you're struggling, it's better to get help now than let this eat at you. His words started to sink in. Maybe he was right. Maybe I wasn't beyond help. Maybe this wasn't something I had to carry alone. I'll think about it, I said quietly. Not sure if I really believed it, but I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just ignore what had happened. Not anymore. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. School, work, socializing. Everything felt like it was slipping through my fingers. Every time I saw my cat, I felt this overwhelming mix of guilt and confusion. It was like a shadow that followed me everywhere I went. Danny kept checking in on me, offering to talk, to hang out. But I didn't feel like I could be around anyone. The weight of what had happened was suffocating, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to confront it. I spent hours researching online, reading about compulsions, therapy, and how people dealt with deep-rooted guilt, but nothing seemed to help. I felt lost. It wasn't until one evening, when I was sitting in the living room, that I got a text from an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the message. We need to talk. I had no idea who it was, but something about the text made me uneasy. The words felt deliberate, like whoever had sent it knew exactly how to push my buttons. I was hesitant to respond, but after a few minutes, curiosity got the better of me. I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came in almost instantly. "It's me, Danny. I need you to meet me. Now." My stomach churned. What could Danny possibly need to say that was so urgent? The suspense was unbearable, but I didn't feel like I had a choice. I grabbed my jacket, stuffed my phone in my pocket, and headed out the door. I arrived at the park near our neighborhood, the place where we used to hang out when we were kids. It was quiet, almost eerily so, with only the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. I spotted Danny standing by the swings, his hands buried in his pockets. He looked different, more serious than usual. "Hey," I said, walking up to him. "What's going on?" He looked at me for a moment before speaking. "We need to talk about what happened, but more importantly, you need to hear the truth." I felt my heart race, but I didn't want to show how panicked I was. "What truth? Danny, what's this all about?" Danny took a deep breath before answering. "I know you've been struggling with what happened with your cat, but I think I've found something that might help you understand everything. I'm worried you're heading down a dangerous path, and I don't want you to get hurt." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear what was coming next, but I knew I had to. Danny's words hung in the air, and for a moment, I was paralyzed with fear. I had no idea what he was talking about. My thoughts were racing, but I could barely keep up. Why was he so serious? What did he know? I finally managed to say, "Danny, just tell me. What are you talking about?" He sighed deeply, his face etched with concern. "I think you need help," he said, his voice low. "You're not the person I've known, and this whole situation with your cat—" I interrupted him, feeling defensive. "What are you implying? That I'm crazy?" "No, not at all," he said quickly, raising his hands. "But I know that you're hiding something, and I've been trying to figure out what's going on. You've been acting strange, and I get it. It's a lot to deal with. But what happened that night, what you did with your cat, it's not normal, and you need to talk to someone about it." I felt a lump form in my throat. His words felt like daggers, but at the same time, I couldn't deny the truth in them. What had I done? I wasn't sure if I had crossed a line, but everything in me screamed that I had. "Don't you think I know that?" I snapped, my voice shaking. "Don't you think I feel like a freak for even considering it? You think I wanted this to happen?" Danny stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I know you're not a freak, man. I know you, but it's not about blame. You've been acting out of control, and I'm worried. I've been doing some research. There's a condition. It's called zoophilia. It's not something people like to talk about, but it's real." My heart dropped into my stomach. The word hit me like a punch. I had read about it before, but I never thought I could be one of those people. It was a label I didn't want to associate with myself. The thought of it terrified me. "I don't know if you realize how serious this is," Danny continued. "It's something you should seek professional help for. If not, it could spiral into something even worse, and I don't want to see you go down that path. Please, man, don't push this away. You need to confront it." I felt the weight of his words, and for the first time in days, I let myself feel the enormity of what I had done. The guilt I had been shoving down bubbled up, threatening to overwhelm me. How could I have let myself go that far? But at the same time, I couldn't help but feel betrayed. Danny was my best friend, yet here he was, telling me that I needed help, like I was broken. I wanted to scream, to deny everything, but deep down, I knew he was right. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, processing everything Danny had just told me. My hands were shaking. My mind was clouded with confusion, but one thing was clear. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I stood there, staring at Danny, the weight of his words sinking in deeper than I ever expected. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen, unsure of what to say or do next. It was like a fog had descended upon me, clouding my thoughts. The truth of the situation was undeniable, and as much as I wanted to deny it, I couldn't anymore. Danny was still watching me, waiting for a response, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I wanted to be angry at him for bringing this up, for treating me like I was some kind of freak. But the truth was, he was right. He wasn't wrong. I didn't know how to handle what I had done, what I had become. I felt like I was trapped in a situation with no way out. "Man," I finally muttered, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what to do. I'm just so messed up right now. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I don't even understand why it did. I didn't want to hurt anyone, least of all my cat." Danny didn't say anything at first, just watched me, and I could see the worry in his eyes. He wasn't judging me, at least not in the way I thought he would. He was worried, and that made everything worse. I didn't want to be a problem. I didn't want to be someone who needed fixing. You don't have to figure it all out right now, Danny said softly, his voice steady. You don't have to do this alone, but you have to take responsibility for what you've done, and you have to get help. I don't want to see you spiral any further. You're my friend, and I care about you. I could hear the sincerity in his voice, and it made the guilt and shame I was already feeling intensify. I had to face it. I had to face myself. I looked away, my hands trembling. I don't even know where to begin, Danny. I don't know what's wrong with me. Why did I do this? Why can't I stop thinking about it? He took a deep breath, his hand still on my shoulder. We all have our demons. We all have stuff we're hiding from ourselves. But the first step to dealing with it is being honest about it. You don't have to hide anymore, man. It's going to be hard, but you've got to face it head on. I didn't know if I was ready to face it yet, but I knew that I had to try. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't keep living like this, trapped in my own mind, pretending everything was fine. I had made a mistake, a huge one, and now I had to figure out how to fix it. All right, I said quietly, swallowing hard. I'll do it. I'll go get help. I don't want to feel like this anymore. Danny's face softened and he pulled me into a hug. I'm proud of you, man. I know it's not easy, but you're taking the right step. And I'll be here, every step of the way. It wasn't going to be easy, I knew that. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like there was a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone in this. I had Danny, and maybe, just maybe, I could work through it. The days after that conversation with Danny were a blur. I was barely functioning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the face of my cat, and the memory of what happened just kept playing on repeat. I could feel the weight of my actions bearing down on me, threatening to suffocate me, but Danny's words stuck with me. I had to take responsibility. I had to get help. It wasn't easy. The shame I felt was overwhelming. But somehow, I made the call. I found a therapist, someone I could talk to about everything, my emotions, my actions, and what had led me to this point. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Admitting to someone, even a stranger, that I had done something so wrong felt like opening a door to a room full of ghosts. But I had to do it. For my own peace of mind, if nothing else. The therapist was kind. She didn't judge me, but she didn't sugarcoat things either. She made it clear that what I had done wasn't just a mistake, it was something deeper. There were underlying issues, things that I needed to face about myself. I didn't expect this to be easy, but I was prepared to try. I had to. It was in that first session that I began to understand just how deep my issues ran. It wasn't just about what had happened with the cat. It wasn't just about the shame and guilt I was feeling. It was about me, about how I had been bottling up so many feelings for so long, never addressing them, never allowing myself to feel. I had let the anger, confusion, and pain build up inside me until it exploded in the most disturbing way possible. But now, sitting in front of someone who understood, I felt like I could start to unravel the mess I had made. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a chance at healing. As the weeks went by, I continued with my therapy sessions, and little by little, things started to change. I still couldn't shake the guilt or the horror of what I had done, but I was learning to forgive myself. It wasn't easy, and I knew it would take time. I was making progress, though. Every session peeled back another layer of the darkness inside me, and I started to understand why I had pushed my feelings down for so long. But the more I worked on myself, the more I realized how much I had hurt those around me. I wasn't just hurting my cat, I had hurt Danny too. The guilt of what I had done to him, watching him struggle with the knowledge of my actions, weighed just as heavily on me. He had been my support system for so long, and I had betrayed him in the worst possible way. I didn't know how to fix things with him. How do you even begin to repair something so broken? But I knew I had to try. I couldn't just leave things the way they were. I owed him that much. I called him one night, my hands shaking as I dialed his number. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before he picked up. Hello? I could hear the hesitation in his voice. Danny, I said, my voice cracking. I need to talk to you. I'm sorry. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need you to know that I'm trying to change. I'm going to therapy, and I'm doing the work. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for everything. There was a long pause, and I could hear him sigh on the other end. You've got a lot to answer for, man, he said, his voice soft but heavy. But if you're serious about getting help, then I'll support you. Just don't expect everything to go back to the way it was right away. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but I also knew this was just the beginning. The road to redemption wouldn't be easy, and I wasn't expecting it to be. But at least now, I knew I had a chance. As I continued my therapy, I realized that healing wasn't just about making amends with those I had hurt. It was also about coming to terms with the parts of myself I had tried to bury for so long. I had hidden behind my shame and guilt for years, but now I had to face the person I had become and take accountability for my actions. It was hard, it was painful, but it was necessary. Every session I would learn more about myself, my triggers, and the patterns of behavior that led me to make the choices I did. I learned that I had never truly processed my emotions properly. I had pushed everything aside, thinking that if I ignored it, it would go away. But that wasn't the case. It had all come rushing back in a way I wasn't prepared for, and now I was forced to confront it. One evening, I found myself alone, sitting on the couch with my thoughts. I had spent the day thinking about everything, my actions, the people I had hurt, and the things I needed to do to make things right. It was overwhelming, but it also gave me a sense of clarity. I knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be worth it if I could rebuild the trust I had destroyed. I had a lot of work to do with Danny, I knew that. But what about my cat? I had hurt him too. I had allowed my actions to affect him, and I couldn't change the past. But maybe, just maybe, I could start to make things right for him too. I had to prove to him that I was someone he could trust again. In the following weeks, I began making small but significant changes in my life. I spent more time with Danny, listening to him without judgment, allowing him to share his feelings without trying to fix everything immediately. I understood now that healing takes time. It wasn't just about saying the right things, it was about showing through actions that I had learned, that I was committed to doing better. I also made sure to spend more quality time with my cat, making up for the moments I had lost, reassuring him with every pet, every treat, and every affectionate glance. Slowly, I started feeling like I was on the path to recovery. I had learned to confront my own darkness and work through the guilt and shame, and I was starting to see the light again. But, despite all of this, there was still one part of me that hadn't healed. The part where I questioned if I could ever truly make amends for what I had done. What if it wasn't enough? What if Danny and the cat never forgave me? That was when I realized something crucial. The road to healing isn't about being perfect. It's about trying. It's about acknowledging the mistakes, accepting the consequences, and doing everything you can to make things right, even when you feel like you don't deserve to. I may never get back to where we were before everything fell apart, but I'm starting to think that's okay. I've learned to take things day by day, focusing on the steps I can control, the progress I can make, and the relationships I can still rebuild. So, if you're reading this and you've ever hurt someone you love, or you've ever felt like you couldn't come back from your mistakes, remember that it's never too late to try. If I can start over, so can you. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to rebuild a relationship after making a huge mistake? What did you learn from that experience?